Hello, everybody. We welcome you to another edition of the Mike and Bradley Sports Scene. My name is Mike Smith, and normally Bradley Hargis would be with me, but unfortunately, due to commitments, he was not able to be here today. And so instead, Albert Roberts has one of the duo of Albert and Billy, shown here also on Bledsoe Telephone Channel 18, has agreed to step in as a co-host here tonight and today. And so as a result, we're going to it's pretty much going to be a free-for-all day, which means basically outside of discussing a couple of points, we're going to basically discuss whatever comes to mind, sports scene or otherwise. Of course, last Friday night, Bledsoe County improves to 6-2 on the year with a 35-6 win over they left the Wildcats on a fog, so to speak, as a fog kind of descended on the field at James T. Warden Field and really got to the point where we just could not see the stands and the fans but however, Bledsoe County wins 35-6. They're 6-2, their fifth straight winning season. Congratulations to them, and they also get into the playoffs for the ninth straight year. And of course,
ninth straight
year. That's a record for Bledsoe County.
Well, they demolished Polk County, didn't they?
They limited Polk County to 49 yards rushing on the ground. That's pretty good. That's pretty good shooting.
For four quarters, that's an average of barely 15.
Actually, about around that, about close to about that. Yeah, I would say. But there really is that
12.
It'd be very interesting.
Yeah.
Albert, like I said, Bledsoe County did a good job. They sort of fogged out the Wildcats, so to speak. 35-6, and they're 6-2 on the season. Their fifth straight winning season. That's a record also for Bledsoe County.
I heard the score was 38-6.
Yeah, it was 35-6. I'm afraid. I wish it was 38-6, but
you were there.
Yeah, I was there doing the game last Friday night. Bledsoe County is off this week. However, they'll be on the road at Gordonsville the next week over, and then we'll finish with Oneida. Now, what does that mean for Bledsoe County? Well, the Oneida game is basically for second place in the region. You win that, and you will be hosting a first-round game. Now, the big thing is that instead of playing a Middle Tennessee team, which we have played in years past, we would play an Upper East Tennessee team at Johnson City. So you don't want to go on the road in the first round.
So you'd want to be the host team.
Yes, you do. First and second hosts. Third and fourth will go on the road. Now, York right now is all but locked up to region title. They could lose a game. They could afford to lose a game.
But didn't they beat us?
They beat us, so they would hold the tiebreaker. So,
okay.
At this point, the Warriors, of course, 6-2. They had a rough start to start out, but they have a 4-game winning streak coming in here next week at Gordonsville. And then Gordonsville, by the way, is over in Middle Tennessee. That's near Nashville, Smith County. That's near Carthage. So that's more or less. So get on I-40 until you get to the Gordonsville exit. Get off that. The school will easily be spotted from that point on. And then, of course, Oneida here Friday night, the last game of the season, Halloween week. And, of course, I would like everybody to dress up in Halloween costumes. Albert, first off, welcome.
Well, I'm thrilled to be. I'm also surprised.
Well, Albert, I got some facts for you here. And Billy gave this to me. And he said, He said you have 7 episodes that you've done, 200, that had over 100,000 views. That's a lot of people. And you have the 200 episode, 465,000 views total. That is amazing.
That's almost 500,000 people.
There are not that many people in Bledsoe County, to be sure.
14,000 maybe in Bledsoe County.
15,000, yeah, I think it was. But, 465,000. People are interested in you. And that's a great thing for you to have. You got people all over the world is tuning you on YouTube, watching your guys interact the way you do. I listen to you guys, and it's just absolutely marvelous what you guys have done for this community. You have brought Pikeville into the spotlight in a positive way that no one else could have over the years.
Come on. It's hard to believe.
I know it's hard to believe, but as I say, a lot of people are just listening to it. I listen to it driving down here from Crossville. You can actually hear you guys up in Crossville. So you got about 30 miles up that road, and probably 30 miles to the west, 30 miles to the east, and 30 miles to the south. And they're listening. They're watching. Because people are hungry for something that doesn't, they don't want to, hear the talking heads, talk politics and that sort of thing. And, we're supposed to be talking about sports. Well, we can talk about anything we want on the show here today, and that's what we're going to do. But let's talk about marbles. I know, Albert. People they always say, ask Albert about the marbles.
Let me tell you about marbles.
Okay.
When I was a kid, I loved to play marbles.
Mm-hmm.
At recess, we would always either draw a square or a circle.
Yeah.
And if you wanted to play, you put your marble inside that circle or that square.
Yeah.
Then when it came your turn to shoot, as long as you could knock a marble out, you kept on shooting.
Yeah.
Well, one day my dad and I were in the basement, and I had a bunch of quart jars full of marbles up on the bank. And my dad said, "Where did all these marbles come from?" I said, "They're mine, Dad." He said, "Where'd you get them?" I said, "I won them at school." He said, "You gamble?" I said, "I sure do."
Marbles could be considered a sport in a way. I think why it is an Olympic sport, I don't know. But,
I don't think it's an Olympic sport. But let me tell you, it is a sport. Billy won't agree with me, but there is a state park in the state of Tennessee where they hold marble tournaments. And people go, listen, we had a man came to Putnam Reed Funeral Home one time to resurface the parking area. He had a pocket full of marbles. He said, "Let's trade marbles." A man.
That's that's interesting. It is. Speaking of Olympic sports, they're concerned in making flag football an Olympic sport. Now, everybody knows anybody's ever played flag football. It's just like football, except you have this little flag or a little strip of cloth, and if you yank it off, it's like a tackle. Yeah. So basically, that's right. It's like it's like
sissies.
It's touch football in a way.
Yeah.
And that sort of thing. But your show, you have often talked about sports in a way, and you talked about the college football sports. Albert, who do you think was the greatest college football coach of all time?
Neyland.
Neyland certainly was. Neyland. Somebody asked him how he pronounced his name. He said, "Neyland, like my knee." And that sort of thing. And of course,
I like that.
It had a guy working for the Vol Network, and Mike Keith. He now does Tennessee Titans broadcast. He said he was at network control. Said, "Now we'll turn you back to Neyland Stadium." He says, as soon as he went back on the air, you heard John Voice playing say, "That's Neyland Stadium." They told a story about John Ward, and this is an interesting story. And I heard this when John Ward died. They had a memorial service, and I was watching it. And they had a funny thing. He used to do Lady Vols broadcasts. When Pat Summitt was just starting out, and they went down there. They were driving to a tournament in Middle Tennessee. And one of the guys said, "Hey, I'm hungry," and you stop at a McDonald's. Says, "No," and John Ward says, "No, we don't have time. We know what time we got to get there. But the fact of the matter is the game wasn't until tomorrow night." Okay, so he said, "Okay, finally we'll stop." And he says, so someone said, "They want a hamburger, they want a Big Mac, they want this, they want that." And they said, "On a fish." Okay, he had a fish sandwich and a milk. They won the game. Okay, next week they went to another place for a thing, and it says, "We need to stop at a McDonald's." "Oh, we don't have time to do that. Don't have time to do that." They said, "Okay, we'll stop at this place." So he stops at this place, and he says, "Well, have a hamburger." No, I got it all down for you. Same thing they had last time. Fish sandwich and the milk. That. Next week they went to another tournament game. They had a different person in the car with them, and they stopped. "We'll stop at the McDonald's and we'll have something to eat. And we'll have the same thing we had last time." Well, the woman said, "No, you'll have the fish sandwich and the milk." He said, "Well, she didn't eat the fish sandwich and the milk, and the team lost." And John Ward used to tease her and said, "You had eaten that fish sandwich, that milk, Tennessee, Pat Summitt would have had 9 national championships instead of 8. It was that funny. Yeah, I think Neyland was the greatest coach in the world because really even today, you look at it, 173, 31 and 12. Okay, he won 4 national championships.
4 national championships.
He brought up he vetted the phone phone booth calls from the bench to
I
the press box.
announced that last Friday on
Right.
our show.
Right.
And listen, that's followed through all the way to the pros now.
Yeah.
I have a book that someone gave me, Football's Greatest Dynasty.
Yeah.
And that was under Neyland.
Yeah, and the other thing about it was that he also met the tearaway jersey, which they don't have anymore.
Yeah, okay.
Tearaway jersey and that sort of thing, and he was a vendor of the modern thing. And what it was is that if you look at all the winning percentage, that Bear Bryant, the only coach that Bear Bryant never beat on a regular basis was Neyland.
Barry Bryant did do as well at Kentucky as he did at Alabama, but the thing about Neyland, I think he might have been the one that came up with the idea of having 3 or 4 patches on your schedule every year.
Yeah, he did.
Because that would help your winning percentage. If you and those schools wanted to play the big skies so they could get more money.
You know, it's like Scrappy Moore when he used to play Chattanooga every year. And Notre Dame would always play Alabama would play the Notre Dame box formation. And then the coach Thomas retired and they went to the T formation. Well, Chattanooga was just before Alabama. And then talked to Scrappy Moore and said, "You know that Alabama has switched to the T?" I said, "Yes, I know that." I said, "Who is your biggest money maker during the game?" "You guys." I said, "How about changing your formation?" So he Scrappy Moore changed from the Notre Dame box formation to the T. It was a warm-up for Neyland. That's all it was. It was just a warm-up.
Do you remember when UTC beat UT?
Yeah, it was 58. I was born then. It was before my time. But I remember this. They had a near riot from what I heard about it. But, you know, the thing about it is with Neyland is that his winning percentage was best among all the coaches today. Because he could have had a bigger percentage and weren't for military service. World War II. And that sort of thing. But, you know.
That was probably in his prime, too.
Yeah. You know, there's a story about one of his players was going to go into coaching after he finished his football at UT. Well, he heard all the fans grumbling in the late 40s that Neyland should change the T from the single wing, you know, grumbling. And he went and told Neyland about it. And Neyland sort of looked at him and he says, "You cannot live on your press clippings. You must produce." And he says, "Well, you knew right there." So because Neyland knew what fans were like, you say he came out on an elevator one day after a game, after he'd won on the road, and there's these fans sitting around and say, "Here goes the greatest coach in the world." Neyland took one look at them and he says, "That's not what you so-and-so said a couple of weeks ago." He was that type of coach, you know. That I always say Bear Bryant was second in league behind him because Bear Bryant knew how to win.
Bear Bryant was the only coach that I ever heard that could walk on water.
That's what I heard. You know, that sort of thing. You know, the thing about it is, of course, you know, this week Tennessee plays Texas A&M.
Yes.
That'd be the 5th meeting between those two teams. The first time that they played A&M was in the Gator Bowl in '57. That was Bear Bryant was the head coach at Texas A&M. And at that time, he had a heck of a time trying to beat Tennessee. He only beat Tennessee once out of first 11 tries.
One
8-2, 1-8-2, and was the last year he was at Kentucky is when he finally beat Tennessee. That's after Neyland retired. And what it was is that he went down there and they played because Bryant was leaving for Alabama. He was going back to Alabama. This was going to be his final game. He went and played Tennessee in the Gator Bowl. Tennessee won 3-0. Then you remember the 2005 Cotton Bowl where Tennessee just took A&M apart in the Cotton Bowl, 38-7. That was one of the better games I saw. And then, of course, the 2 games they played after that were A&M wins. A&M loses to Alabama.
Yeah.
They lost to Miami earlier. How do you think that game's going to go?
This was Saturday?
Yeah.
I look for Tennessee to assert themselves.
You know, they lost their one of their wide receivers to injury.
Well, our strength is our running game.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that they will. What I noticed last week in all the scores of the SEC teams that played, we only won 6 games while 5 of our opponents lost, but we're playing each other.
Yeah.
So you got to have tit for tat.
Mm-hmm.
The only team that stepped outside the conference was somebody. So I think it was Missouri played Western Michigan or something like that. But all those scores, except Georgia and the one that Vanderbilt was in, those were close games.
They were. You look at Alabama barely got past A&M last week. I mean, you know that. I mean, Florida demolished Vanderbilt, but that's Vanderbilt.
Well, Vanderbilt scored 20 points.
Yeah, but the thing about it is that people tell me, well, the SEC doesn't seem to be as powerful. Well, I don't know. The thing about it is, if you win by close scores against good opponents in the SEC, you're pretty powerful.
They're pretty powerful.
Yeah.
It's hard to bet against an SEC team.
No.
If you're playing out the conference.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're playing in the conference like we did last week, the scores are going to be close.
Yeah.
Even Tennessee should have. I think they should have won higher scores in the games they have won thus far. But I wonder if maybe he's been saving some of the plays for Alabama.
That's after the Texas A&M game, so that's
the 3rd week in October.
Of course, you have Kentucky. Kentucky, I thought maybe should have been competitive with Georgia, but Georgia really just took them to the woodshed.
They took them to the woodshed.
And I mean that tells you what Kentucky. See, the thing about it is with Kentucky is that their biggest mistake, and there are a lot of Kentucky fans will agree with me, is that they ran Bryant off.
Is that what happened?
Which what happened was Rupp team had gotten into trouble for point shaving, and you know what point shaving is. Basically, they pay players to cut down to the desired level of expertise, and the NCAA basically lowered a death penalty, which means basically they couldn't play a schedule. Well, what it was, they told Bryant, "Hey, look, we're going to force Rupp into retirement or fire him, and then we're going to increase your budget so that you can get there." Because what it was, they had put this was ridiculous. I read it was in the book The Last Coach, and it was a great book about Bryant. And they said what it was, they had limited Bryant to 5 out-of-state scholarships. And anybody knows that Tennessee and Kentucky are not chock full of prime material.
Yeah.
And that and Bryant had hit a wall at Kentucky. He's win, but he was not getting where he needed to be. Well, that's fine. He goes down. He's on a recruiting trip. He reads in the paper, no, they're not firing Rupp or retiring. They give him a contract extension and a raise. He goes back. He says, I can't coach her because you lied to me. And the governor of Kentucky, realizing that Bryant is unhappy, Bryant would not be very nice to hang around in Kentucky, tells Kentucky, let him go. Now, the only opening they had was Texas A&M, and that's where he went.
Oh. Okay.
And then he built Texas A&M up from the ground and made them the power. But, after that, it was like it took 25 years before Kentucky got back to a bowl game. That tells you how bad it was at Kentucky.
Well, the thing about it is, and I think students needs to realize this, Kentucky is a basketball school.
It is. It always will be a basketball school. Basketball first, football second.
But Georgia is a football school.
Yeah. Tennessee's a football school, too. And, Duke is a basketball school. North Carolina's a basketball school. Kansas is a basketball school. That tells you right there.
Well, Tennessee's not a basketball school.
Well, they're starting to look a little like a basketball school.
Well, we've got a coach.
Yeah, we do. I read. I got a book about Ray Mears. He said he used to have
Ray Mears.
You remember Bernard King and Ernie Grunfeld?
Ernie and Bernie.
I was more interested in basketball than football with Ernie and Bernie.
I've got a recording of theirs. Mm-hmm. I think I've got The Ernie and Bernie show.
Yeah.
I don't remember what. I've got something at the house. They were something else.
They were. And you know the thing about it is that Bernard King went to Lexington to play Kentucky. They lost to Kentucky by a close score. Well, somebody threw a lit cigarette in Ernie King in hair. Well, they had to restrain him from going after that guy in there, and he made a promise that he would never ever lose to Kentucky ever again, and he kept that promise.
Wow.
He scorched them every time he played the Wildcats, and that tells you what Bernard King and Ernie Grunfeld was. They were the best players that Ray Mears ever recruited at Tennessee, and Ray Mears was just an absolute.
I think Bernard King was just a little bit had more finesse than Ernie did.
Yeah, he was more of like a go-to player.
You gave him the ball, he released it just as soon as he got it.
He got it. I mean, he didn't miss. But it's a great thing that you have with this sort of thing and a rivalry. Okay, we're going to go to a break, and then we're going to come back with some more stuff. And Albert, who's again our guest host tonight, today here at Bledsoe Telephone Cooperative 70th anniversary. We'll be back in just 1 minute for another segment of the Mike and Bradley Sports Scene here on Bledsoe Telephone Channel 18.
You need a bank that you can depend on. Here at Citizens Tri-County Bank, we have the most dependable staff that you will ever meet. Call in, you will not get an automated attendant, you'll get a person. But on the other side, we have all the technology that anyone would need, from apps to online banking to bill pay. So please come and grow with us as we're about to celebrate our 50th year. We are the only community bank you will ever need.
Come and see the beautiful Sequatchie Valley. And while you're here, visit the Dunlap Mercantile. We have a full line of hats from Resistol, Stetson, Charlie One Horse, American Hat Makers, GG Pip, Greeley hats from the TV show Yellowstone, and a full line of vintage hats. Make sure to check out our hat bar where we can clean, shape, and customize a hat just for you, right here at the Dunlap Mercantile.
At Jason Lewis Dunlap Supercenter, we're committed to be better. Better prices, better vehicles, a better experience. Your Jason Lewis Dunlap Supercenter understands that you rely on us to provide you with the highest quality of used vehicles. With over 350 pre-owned cars, trucks, and SUVs. So what are you waiting for? Let us show you a better experience with the Jason Lewis Automotive family. Come visit us at Rankin Avenue here in Dunlap or on the web at dunlapsupercenter.com.
Okay, we're back. We're, of course, discussing a little bit here. Again, here was Albert Roberts. Of course, Bradley Hargis not here today due to other commitments, and hopefully be back in 2 weeks. We were talking about in the on the break about the scores going on, about the competitiveness. 2 weeks ago, Tennessee played South Carolina, and Mr. Rattler, who made our life miserable the year before, well, he got rattled, so to speak, as Tennessee just basically just put it to him. He said simply that was Tennessee's Super Bowl. It may have been Tennessee's Super Bowl. Of course, wore the dark mode jerseys. Did you like those dark mode jerseys?
Yes.
Before 1922, that was what Tennessee wore. Dark
Really?
jersey, black jersey with orange stripes. And what it was that the coach, M.B. Banks, saw the daisy, which was perforating the hills around UT, and said, well, let's go to orange. So we went to orange and white. Now, Oneida, which is coming down here in 2 weeks, wears Tennessee orange.
I did not know that.
Well, see, what it was is that in 1950s, Oneida needed new uniforms, so they went to the University of Tennessee and asked, "Well, do you have any old uniforms you want to get rid of?" And they said, "Sure." Bowden White said, "Sure, take the old ones." That's why Oneida wears orange, Tennessee orange, and that sort of thing. So that's something for you to know. But what it was is that Spencer Rattler is a good quarterback. There's no doubt about it. I mean, he'll be in the top 10 pro pick when he.
They didn't just beat Tennessee last year.
He beat Tennessee last year, and he beat Clemson. And they probably should have stopped celebrating because they got whomped by Notre Dame in the Gator Bowl. But the thing about it is that Spencer Rattler, the defense of Tennessee, did not allow him to get outside and do the things he needed to do. I mean, in the box he was vulnerable, and they caught him several times. They caught him several times, and so as a result, Tennessee won big. 4-1. The Tennessee's slight favorite against Texas A&M. I don't know about Alabama. That's a 2:30 game, by the way. That's scheduled for 2:30. So you're going to be back-to-back afternoon games on CBS, by the way, for those who are watching. But you look at the SEC. You had Ole Miss play, and I think out of conference. I think Mississippi State played some. South Carolina, I don't think played. Alabama played. Got barely past Texas A&M. They still having quarterback problems.
They got by 6 points,
and they have quarterback problems. They're still trying to settle down on that quarterback.
If you don't have if you got two quarterbacks, you don't have either one.
That's the thing about it. You remember in 1971 how Tennessee had trouble with quarterbacks. They went through 3 or 4 quarterbacks before they went with the Blue Max, Jim Maxwell, and settled down and won. They said if Condrich Holler had been eligible to play as a freshman and second, believe me, Tennessee would probably have won the national title that year.
I can remember being up there when Condrich Holloway came into the game. The stands went wild.
Absolutely. UCLA game, 74. The thing about it is that if you ever watch The Color Orange, that documentary about Condrich Holloway, he told a story about how Ray Trail, who was the assistant coach at Tennessee, was trying to snare him. The Montreal Expos were also trying to snare him too because he was a great baseball player. Anyway, they meet in a restaurant, and the Expos scout was not too happy about having Ray Trail there. And he picks up this suitcase, puts it on the table, unzips it. There's $100,000 in money.
And he turned it down.
That's a bonus. And he says, and this is what the Expo scout that turned him off told him. He said, any money I pay you is above the table. Any money they pay you is below the table. And he said, Condrich said he didn't like it. He said, the Metros, he was a tool. He wasn't a value player. He was a tool to be used. And he told Ray Trail, I'm coming to Tennessee. Yeah. His mother also basically said, you're going to Tennessee to play football. He said Alabama wanted him. Auburn wanted him. But Bear Bryant told him, said, not as a quarterback because Alabama's not ready for it yet.
I believe he would have gone to Alabama.
He would have gone to Alabama if they had said, because George Wallace actually tried to recruit him. George Wallace. Yeah. And he said it was amazing.
The governor.
He said the first game they went out against Eddie McShane at Georgia Tech, who was a black quarterback, 2 black quarterbacks, so it got the TV network, ABC, in there to do that. He said he threw a pass, which he never should have thrown. Guy intercepts it. He's going back 80 yards in the clear for a touchdown. Guess who runs him down and tackles him at the 10? Condrich Holloway. He said if he hadn't done it, he would have ended up doing his rest of his Tennessee career as a defensive back. He said that was how it was. He said simply is that Condrich Holloway. And I saw this video a few years back. Condrich had a son at a local prep school in Knoxville, and he played basketball. Well, you can see Condrich in the stands watching. Condrich's kid lost a 60-foot shot, hits the basket, and you can see Condrich going. You can see him do this. This is like crazy, like this. That's a crazy thing that happens. That sort of thing. But yeah, you look at the SEC, how different it is. You know, you look at now, they're going to have Texas and Oklahoma in next year. Oh, Lord.
And let me tell you, Oklahoma beat Texas. Oklahoma was ranked number 11, Texas was ranked number 3.
Mm-hmm.
But both those schools are powerhouses.
Well, you know, Oklahoma has come out better than they have, because last year they were 6 and 7. You know, they're a better team than they were.
Yeah, you better
But
believe
you know, the thing about it is that they're talking about bringing other teams in. Clemson is thinking about coming in, and South Carolina does not want them in. Yes,
I started to say it will depend on. No, I guess it will depend on the upper crust, the ones that make decisions probably. But I would think every school would get a vote.
Yeah, they do, because you know it holds the whole conference, so you got to have every member in there in line. You look like the ACC. Initially, you had a couple of teams that said, "No, we don't want Stanford. We don't want another Pac-12 team in," and then you have SMU in, but somehow somebody must have promised them some money or something like that, and they voted for it and that sort of thing. But you know, the thing about it is that you look at it, it's all about the money.
It is. That's the reason people want in the SEC. Is when it comes time to write those TV contracts,
Mm-hmm.
they'd rather have the SEC on their ledger than the Pac-10 or Pac-12 or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Pac-12. It's the Big Ten and the Pac-12, but there's not another conference as powerful as the SEC.
No, there's, you know, the SEC has won 75% of the national championships in football over the past 40 years.
But you know what? This year, there's only one team in the SEC in the top 10.
And that's, well, actually 2. Alabama's at number 9 this week.
Oh, are they not? They were number 11 last week.
That's right. They jumped up 2 spots.
Okay.
So,
just
you know,
by beating Texas A&M.
Beating Texas A&M, they jumped
6 points.
They jumped up 2 spots. They beat a good Texas A&M team. But you know, the thing about it is, you know, the SEC championship game. Okay, you know, the story behind that, Roy Kramer, who was the commissioner of the SEC, found a clause in the NCAA bylaws saying that you can have a conference championship team if you had 12 teams in your conference and divide up into divisions. He came up with this idea,
really?
And the other SEC schools say, "Are you out of your mind?" He said, "We have trouble beating ourselves as it, we beating everybody else as it is." They said, "We'll never win a national championship that way." Well, first thing they went to is that they thought about Florida State. But Florida said, no, absolutely not. We got enough problems with enough rivals as it is. And that's certainly true. Tennessee has more rivals in the SEC than any other team in the SEC.
You better believe it.
And then they said, well, okay. Then they went to Texas and Texas A&M, ironically. And they were all ready. Hey, yeah, sure, we want to get into this. Then the state legislatures got into the act, said no. Because they were in Southwest Conference at the time.
Okay. And the Southwest Conference was strong.
It actually had a lot of weaknesses. It did, because it collapsed when Arkansas.
It did, but when you look at Texas and Oklahoma and some of those other teams that were in the Southwest Conference, it was pretty powerful.
You know, that's certainly true. But you know, the thing about it is that then Arkansas. And Frank Broyles, who was the athletic director, he had the authority to make the move. He didn't really have to get permission from the university to do it.
But he had some Tennessee ties.
Yeah, he had, you know, Johnny Majors was a coach for him. Doug Dickey was a coach for him. And, you know, they said this sort of thing. So he calls up the SEC, hey, we'd like to come in, because he's tired of being in a conference that's riddled with probation. And, you know, basically he wanted, because he felt that Arkansas was being disrespected in the Southwest Conference, which is probably true. So they said, sure, take it in. Then South Carolina says, hey, we want to come in. We have not been in the conference in years. We want to get part of the gravy. So that was in. They said, now, the SEC championship game, okay, you had Alabama, and it was supposed to be Alabama and Tennessee. Yeah, it looked like that way for a few weeks until Tennessee lost 3 straight. And then what it was is that they had trouble selling the thing to a network. What network would show it? ABC said, okay, sure, we'll show it for $1 million. Believe it or not, that's dirt cheap, you know, like that. And they went in there, and the first thing that happened is Florida was beating Alabama all over the field, and everybody's going to say, oh, well, everybody's right. they're not going to win a national championship. Florida's going to win this way, and just throw the whole thing out the roof. Then, of course, Alabama intercepts the pass, returns it, wins the game, goes on, wins the national championship. And they said ABC after that, they said, we could have asked for 10 times that month and gotten it. And ABC was satisfied. They moved it from Legion Field because Legion Field was in bad shape. They moved to Georgia Dome in Atlanta, which is a good place for that.
We went to see, we went to Athens, Georgia, and Herschel Walker walked in.
Yeah.
It was on the day after they put Herschel Walker in the lineup and they beat Tennessee.
Yeah.
And I walked over to his table and I said, Mr. Walker, I said, my name is Albert Roberts and I'd like to have your autograph. He had his girlfriend with him that he later married.
Yeah.
And he gave me his autograph.
Yeah, he's that type of person. You know, they put him in there, and they weren't going to play him. No. You know, they weren't going to play him, and they're behind 15-2. And what happens? They put him there, and he went there, and he ran over Bill Bates, one of the biggest Tennessee defensive linemen you ever had. Knocked him down, knocked him out of the way like he was nothing. And they went in there, and of course Georgia went on to win the national championship that year. And you know what it is that they had, you know, if you're watching Saturdays in the South, which is a great documentary on the Southeastern Conference. It's a great documentary. You got to watch it. It's a great thing. And they had a thing where Herschel Walker was in the Sugar Bowl that year against Notre Dame, and he dislocated his shoulder on the third play of the game. And you know, a dislocated shoulder is a very painful thing to have if you've ever had it. Well, what he did is he simply just snapped it back into position and played the rest of the game, and they won the national championship that year. This is how Herschel Walker was. And somebody gave him some bad advice, because he could have come back and played for his fourth year, but someone told him to get an agent, which was legal then. Because after he found out he took an agent, they told him you can't play football at Georgia anymore.
Oh, really?
And that's how it worked. You know, that sort of thing.
Well, there's a lot of things that goes on under the table that we don't know about.
There's no doubt it is. You know, that sort of thing. You look at Florida. I always get a kick out of the people at Florida who would blame Tennessee for having their SEC title stripped in '84 and '85. And I would tell them, we didn't do the stripping. The conference did the stripping. You committed the violations. Therefore, it adds up.
I never did like Steve Spurrier when he was coach at Florida. He always enjoyed beating Tennessee.
He said against Georgia, he said no one ever scored 50 points on Georgia. He went ahead and did it. Now he said, well, Steve Spurrier wanted to go to Tennessee as a college football player, but they were wanted a single wing at the time.
There you go.
Bowden White, who was the head coach, was running the single wing. He didn't have the people to run it. He wouldn't change it. And Ray Mears knew that Steve Spurrier was a fantastic basketball player. So he goes to Bowden White and he says, look, we can get him for basketball as well as football. They offer him to come on as a punter. Now, would you take Peyton Manning and say, hey, you're gonna play your 4 years as a water boy? You don't do that.
No.
You know. Well, Bowden White said, I'm not changing my offenses for one man. And the next year, Bowden White was fired.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They went in there and they said, because Bowden White kept going, and the joke was going around in the 1960s. They said, well, Tennessee football players all ought to be dressed in number 64 or 46, and you're guaranteed to have that record every year. It was that bad. Because that was Bowden White wouldn't change his formations.
Well, Tennessee kept that single wing too long.
He did. When Johnny Majors was the last of the great single wing tailbacks. That was it. They said it was the last of it. They said didn't have anybody else could match him in that.
How long was Johnny Majors at Pittsburgh?
He was from 73 to 76.
Just 3 years.
Just 4 years. 4 years count. 4 seasons. He won the national championship at Pittsburgh. And what it was, the story was that they had offered him a fabulous sums of money if he'd stay at Pittsburgh. And he was considering it because, you know, he gone there because he had enough talent there. He could have won 2 or 3 more national championships at Pittsburgh. That's how it was. Because he got word that the NCAA was a limited number of scholarships, and so he signed as many players as he can get his hands on before that rule hit. That's how he won at Pittsburgh. And he came to Tennessee, and he said he got in the car with a guy. He said, "Well, going to Tennessee." And he said, "Well, what did they do?" I said, "Well, they offer me all this money, but I had to open up the envelope and don't want to." He never opened up the envelope.
Wow.
Because the difference in Tennessee, he couldn't do a sponsorship for companies. He could do it at Pittsburgh, but he couldn't do it at Tennessee. There's a rule about that and that sort of thing.
Well, there's something about Tennessee. I think it's 102,000 seats. that helps attract.
It does attract. You know, the thing about it is that, you know, I got a book by Bill Battle, the former Tennessee coach.
Oh yeah.
The Master's Plan, and he talked a lot about what it meant to go to Tennessee, and he said simply is that he went there, and he said it just was that the odds caught up with him. You know, Bear Bryant had rebuilt his team, and that was giving him trouble, and that was a number of things, and the talent level was going on down. He decided that it was best for him to leave. He can get out, so he went into business and that sort of thing. And incidentally, he still one of his companies licenses sports for the University of Tennessee and other college sports. So, you know, he's still involved in that and that sort of thing.
We've had some great coaches down through the years.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. I think, Neyland, of course, was probably the best Tennessee coach of all time.
Well, I think he had a mind for it.
He was military. It was all military. You know,
general.
He was an officer. He's an army officer, so he treated it like it was the military thing.
He never did drop that general either.
No, he was a general. That's what he ended up being, a general in the army and that sort of thing. He comes back and that sort of thing, and he.
But I guess your great minds that are in the military, they don't want to drop it.
No.
Colin Powell, you remember him?
Yeah.
Colin Powell was asked, how do you live with the fact that you got the whole army on your shoulders and in time of battle? He said, well, I sleep like a baby every night. They said, you do? He said, yeah, I wake up every 2 hours screaming.
That's Colin Powell for you, this sort of thing. Like I said, the great generals, General Marshall, George C. Marshall, he told a senator one time in a committee meeting, he says, you give a good general a little material, he will succeed. You give a mediocre general a great lot of material, and he will fail. And you know that senator who he told that to? Harry Truman. Harry Truman. He understood that.
I went into Truman's home, and of course Truman was not there. He was dead.
Yeah, he's dead.
But there was a plaque on the desk. It said, the buck stops here.
That's right, because he took responsibility. Neyland graduated the same year as another general, Eisenhower. Same year as Eisenhower.
Oh, really?
It said because there were so many generals came out of that class. They call that's the class the stars fell upon, and so he knew Eisenhower. He knew Eisenhower, and actually turned Eisenhower down when he wanted to appoint him to the chairmanship of TVA. He said, "I'm not interested. Thank you very much." But that sort of thing. Bryant said something about Neyland is that he said there was 2 things about Neyland that you didn't do. You didn't intrude upon his recruiting territory, and you couldn't beat him if you didn't have the blood. He never beat him. He said he went up there in 1950. His team was undefeated. Okay, ranked number 3. All they had to do was beat Tennessee. They'd be in the Rose Bowl and play for the national championship. They went up there. It snowed the night before. It was cold, and the referees took it away from him. He said they was home cooking.
Really?
He said that's how it was.
I've heard that before.
And
That's sad.
Neyland said, Bryant said Neyland said had the better players, he had the better coaches, and I couldn't stand it.
Let me tell you mentioned Eisenhower a while ago.
Mm-hmm.
When Eisenhower became president, this was in the early 50s,
Mm-hmm.
I believe it was 51.
Yeah.
He said that he felt like our nation was drifting morally,
Yeah.
and he brought in Billy Graham. Billy Graham said, "Why did you call me, Mr. President?" He said, "Well, Billy, I want to throw something in your lap."
Mm-hmm.
He said, "I want you to pray about our nation and come back to me with recommendations that you would make a president of this country." So Billy Graham took his advice and went home and prayed about it. Then when he came back, he said, "I have 2 recommendations to make to you, Mr. President." All of the time I was going to school from I was born in 35. I think I started in 41 or 42 until I graduated in 1953. When I did the pledge to the American flag, I never said we are one nation under God, because that was not in the pledge. This was recommended by Billy Graham to President Dwight David Eisenhower that we include that in the pledge to the flag. Then he said, "I would like to make a second suggestion to you, Mr. President. On our coins, let us put 'In God We Trust.'" So that was happening. That happened when Eisenhower was president.
Absolutely. Okay, well, we come back for our final segment. We'll wrap things up there, and we'll talk about a few more things before we go here tonight. Of course, as you're watching the Mike and Bradley Sports Scene with myself and our guest host Albert Roberts here on Bledsoe Telephone Cooperative Channel 18.
At Jason Lewis Dunlap Supercenter, we're committed to be better. Better prices, better vehicles, a better experience. Your Jason Lewis Dunlap Supercenter understands that you rely on us to provide you with the highest quality of used vehicles. With over 350 pre-owned cars, trucks, and SUVs. So what are you waiting for? Let us show you a better experience with the Jason Lewis Automotive family. Come visit us at Rankin Avenue here in Dunlap or on the web at dunlapsupercenter.com.
Come and see the beautiful Sequatchie Valley. And while you're here, visit the Dunlap Mercantile. We have a full line of hats from Resistol, Stetson, Charlie One Horse, American Hat Makers, GG Pip, Greeley hats from the TV show Yellowstone, and a full line of vintage hats. Make sure to check out our hat bar where we can clean, shape, and customize a hat just for you, right here at the Dunlap Mercantile.
You need a bank that you can depend on. Here at Citizens Tri-County Bank, we have the most dependable staff that you will ever meet. Call in, you will not get an automated attendant, you'll get a person. But on the other side, we have all the technology that anyone would need, from apps to online banking to bill pay. So please come and grow with us as we're about to celebrate our 50th year. We are the only community bank you will ever need.
Okay, this is our final segment of the show today, and of course, we've had a pretty good time. Albert, thank you for being here. Of course, baseball. Well, the divisional playoffs are underway. Apparently, for the Phillies, I believe I think they're playing Atlanta.
Oh yes,
and it's I think it's tied at 1-1
game number
right now.
3.
So they're going to go into game 3. It's tied at 1-1. Of course, the Orioles, apparently, I have a cousin that lives in Maryland who's a big Orioles fan. She's always bragging on the Orioles.
Pat Foster is a big fan of the Orioles, and they're behind 2 games to 0.
That's it. So they may be eliminating for that. And, of course, you got the Dodgers.
The Dodgers won 100 ball games out of 62, and yet they're behind 2 games to zip. They can't beat the Diamondbacks 3 in a row.
Well, the thing about it is that you could be sharp during the regular season, and you could be dull as dishwater in the
Kershaw
postseason.
pitched the first game, and he got 1 out.
Mm-hmm.
Gave up 6 runs, we just got 1 out. So that's our ace. So what do you do?
Well, the thing about with baseball is it's a funny game. You never know how it's going to go. You look at the infamous they take the pennant. The famous black and white where they come back down. The Giants take the pennant or something like that, and all that. And it was like sort of a crazy thing on that. But a lot of things that I'm not a big baseball fan, to be honest with you right now, but I do know that Babe Ruth is not a candy bar. But so I used to tell people all the time, Babe Ruth is not a candy bar, and a diamond is not something that a girl wears around your neck. That's sort of. I went to saw a couple of Mets games during my senior trip in 1980.
Really?
Yeah, we saw the New York Mets. I think they were playing. I think Pittsburgh Pirates, I believe. I don't remember who won. But it's really rather, being in this big stadium, and then they announce, we welcome the Bledsoe County High School class of 1980 to the stadium, and everybody gets up and cheers, and like this. And the funny thing about it is they had some students from a private Catholic school who got in, and they started razzing us and all that, and we were about to go start the Civil War all over again with some of them Yankee boys, so to speak, but we thought better of it because we would have to call our parents to come bail us out of jail. That would not have been very pleasant, especially for me, but that sort of thing. But went to New York City and saw a lot of things, including the World Trade Center, which we actually got to go up in there at top and saw what that sort of thing, and never would ever feel that we would have that many years later. But speaking of a lot of things, college football, of course, this Saturday, of course, Tennessee, Texas A&M, a number of big games in the conference and across the nation. Of course, we hope that Tennessee will win Saturday afternoon against Texas A&M here tonight. Of course, Bledsoe's off this week for football. It's their off week, and they will be at Gordonsville the Friday afterwards, and they'll be back home for Oneida. We like the fans to show up for both games. We like them to show up, especially for the Oneida game, because this is simple. It's Bledsoe wins, they're second. Oneida wins, they're second. If Bledsoe loses, they're going to be on the road in the first round, and that's going to be a long trip, and I think that's something we don't want.
That's a minus.
And so that's so we asked the fans to show up for that. And Bledsoe County, of course, will try to hopefully go to 8-2 on the season with a win over Gordonsville and Oneida.
That would give them an 8-2 record.
And would give an 8-2 record, second place at least in the region. York holds the tiebreaker. York could basically clinch the region title with a win this week or next week. But anyway, it's just how it goes. Of course, high school playoffs. We'll have the brackets for you when we get them to see how that's going to go and which way that will go. Hopefully by the next broadcast. And of course, a lot of things. Of course, a lot of teams in the area are also competing. Marion County's undefeated at this point, 7-0. South Pittsburgh's undefeated at this point. Whitwell, Sail Creek, they're all in the playoff mix. Sequatchie County's in the playoff mix. Grundy County, surprisingly, is doing well. And then, of course, you got basketball about to come up in a few weeks as everybody gets ready for that.
November, won't it?
It'll be November. They'll start the. We'll hopefully have a schedule for you on the next broadcast here at Bledsoe Telephone Cooperative. So, Albert, glad you were with us today. Glad you filled in for Bradley. You did really well, and I appreciate you being here.
Let me thank you for the opportunity you gave me. I did not know I was going to be co-host. I thought I was just going to be a guest on your show.
Well, like you got promoted up to co-host, and they said, and Billy said, try to get it out of him. Try to get it out of Albert, and I think I did. So, but anyway, Albert, again, thank you very much for being here in the here today for the Mike and Bradley Sports Scene Show. We will see you in 2 weeks, and that, of course, will be the finale of the regular football season as Bledsoe County will host Oneida. That'll be in a region matchup, as Bledsoe County, of course, will be at Gordonsville next week, and they will be hosting Oneida, again, as I say. And we encourage the fans to show up in force to cheer on the Warriors to victory at Pikeville against Oneida and lock down a home playoff berth in the first round. So farewell, good day. We'll see you 2 weeks on the next edition of the Mike and Bradley Sports Scene here on Bledsoe Telephone Cooperative Channel 18. Good day, everybody.
See ya.
Brought to you by Bledsoe Telephone Cooperative in the Sequatchie Valley.